Hello, Star Citizens, and welcome to the final day, technically, of the new ship sales, I guess. So it's day 9 of the IAE, and we are on Anvil Day, and there are, I would say, there's one surprise, and then there's two, we kind of knew it was coming, but we just didn't know details. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go through Anvil's Day, and in a separate video, I'll actually talk about the new ships. In this one, I'll talk about them just a little bit, just to say whether I think they're valuable or not. But in a separate video, I'll kind of break those down. Actually, multiple separate videos, I'll break down each one of those and whether I think they're worth the new prices. And of course, I'll be doing ship reviews on everything that's new over the course of December. So look out for those. Get CCUs if you're not sure. And then, of course, you can make the decision to actually purchase it later once I have the reviews out. But I'll give you a quick yay or nay in this video. But as always, make sure that you hit that like button or that dislike button, either way. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're leaving a comment. And then you will, of course, be entered to win our ship that we're giving away this month, which is the Star Lancer TAC. And if you're subscribed this month, it's gonna help you out next month. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. Today is the day to subscribe. I think it's actually the last day that you can subscribe and then still qualify for what's happening next month, which is gonna be great. Which I'll announce within the next week or so. Just gotta confirm a few things. Let's get into Anvil Day. There is a lot of ships to go over, and there is a war bond that seems to be half decent. So Anvil Day, whew, let's go. All right, so we got the Terrapin Medic. At first glance, I am not impressed with the price. It is $220. However, you can get one for $200 if you war bond it out, but you cannot upgrade to that war bond. You have to purchase it with cash, and that's the biggest deal. So the most, if you get this $20 off, that's the most you'll ever get off of it. And that's a problem, because basically the only way to get this and save more than $20 is to buy the $220 version and use all of your CCUs and upgrades to get to it, which is what I'm doing. Mine, so far, I've got down to 185, but even if you just use certain things from this IAE, you could have gotten it down to 175. And at 175, I think it's worth it. At 220, I don't think it's worth it. Even at 200, I think you're pressing your luck as far as worth. I think it should be 190, 190 at the most. But even then, that's a little bit expensive. It should have been a $185 ship. So at 185, I think it's worth it. I'm not even gonna spend 185 on it. I'm gonna wait for a few more CCUs and probably try to get it down to 150. But that's just me, a person that loves the Terrapin. For most people, I think they'd be better off, honestly, doing all that work to get an Apollo, because an Apollo triage is $250, which is $30 more than the Terrapin. So there you have it. There's my 2 cents on the Metapin. Buy one if you're gonna CCU it and get it for like 185 or less. Don't buy one if you want a medical ship that's valuable, because then you should just get the triage. The F7R and the F7CS. Now, to be very quick about these two, the Ghost is one of the best ships as far as, I mean, it was, when it was the Mark I, it was one of the best ships that had stealth. But I'm going to have to compare the Ghost to the Firebird and see which one I'd rather have now, because they're both the same price and they both have the same amount of stealth. So this might end up replacing the Firebird as far as my go-to stealth ship that I want to get when I'm in the game. And so I'm gonna pick up a CCU for now. But I still have to do that comparison, because those are the big two that I'm wanting to compare it to. But I'm thinking that this will be the more fighter-oriented stealth ship, whereas the Firebird is the more sneak up on you and try to blow you up and weaken you first, and with less fighting type of ship. Whereas the Tracker, you know, it's got that long-range radar. you know, this is, if you're trying to find somebody or trying to find something, the tracker is there, and it's going to always have that dual purpose because that radar can be used to find things other than people and ships, right? So like I said, I'll go over both of those. They're both 185. It looks like you can get them for 165 if you do the war bond thing. They both have war bonds. I do think at 165 they start to look a little nice at 165. However, I still wouldn't pay any more than 150 for either one of these because that's about where their value lies. So still 150, you could get that very easily with some war bond magic. If you just do some CCUs and upgrades, you can get these for 150. That's about how much I'd spend on them at first glance. And then we'll skip that one real quick and go to the Valkyrie. The Valkyrie. So I will just pop out real quick and show you what the Valkyrie deal is real quick. All right, so the Valkyrie deal, you get the Valkyrie for 350, which means you're saving 25 total. But the closest price to the Valkyrie is the Starfarer Gemini, and that's $10. So you're spending 10 to gain 25. That's the deal here. So this is a decent war bond. It's not a great one, but it's a decent one because the Gemini comes on sale fairly often. The Valkyrie, there's a lot of ships you can go to from the Valkyrie. So this is a pretty decent war bond. So 2 days in a row, they've had some decent ones, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so I picked up a few of these and I've already incorporated them. I'm actually almost done with a few CCU chains, so I'm very happy about that. And this is one of those that helped me finish it. So very happy to see that. All right, the Anvil Paladin. Okay, so the Anvil Paladin, it looks like it's $300 with credits, and it is $260 if you buy it war bond. Now, a $40 discount is pretty good, but from looking at what it is not a subcapital, it is not a capital, it is not even a large ship. It looks like it is going to be a medium to large ship. I don't know, it might just hit large, but it looks like it's medium to large, like straddling that line, which is still good. I was really hoping that it would be a subcap or capital, but it looks like they're gonna push that back yet again. But one of the things about this ship, it looks like it's gonna be heavily armored, and it looks like it's going to have size 4 turrets on either side, and then it's gonna have one of those turrets on the top, a quad size 5 turret, mind you. A quad size 5 turret on the top that can go from the top all the way to the bottom, so it can cover both the top and the bottom, but you can't cover both at the same time. So yeah, it looks like it's a pretty good ship either way though. This is looking like it's trying to replace the I need a constellation because of the 4 size 5s, because this has 4 size 5s. It looks like it's trying to replace the people who bought the Corsair just for its firepower. The Hammerhead, or not the Hammerhead, the Redeemer just for its firepower. But it looks like they were nerfing them. I'm not gonna say they were doing it just because of the Paladin, but considering what the Paladin has on it, I could see it challenging the Connie, but the Connie has extras, so I still think there's room for the Connie. I could see it challenging the Redeemer because, you know, it has the guns, but the Redeemer has the interior, so I don't quite know what's on the interior of this. This looks like a 2-person ship, whereas the Redeemer looks like maybe 4, I think it's 4 people. And then it's the Corsair, which the Corsair is 3 people. It looks like there's if you got 2 people, you get the Paladin. If you got 3, you get the Corsair. If you got 4, you can either get the Connie or the Redeemer. And so, yeah, that's my first thought. There is no war bond to it, which I think is not a great deal from CIG. This should have been war bond. It's a $300 ship. A $40 war bond isn't that much. I mean, there's no CCU to it. I mean, there is a war bond. There's no CCU. And yeah, I think that would have been an issue. I think that would have been better. I mean, I think it would have been better, but you know, at 300, I think it's cheaper than the Redeemer, but it's more expensive than the Corsair. At 260, it's technically only $10 cheaper, but you have to spend the full 260, which I wouldn't do, by the way. I would buy the the upgrade at 300, and then you could save all the way down. You could probably get it for 190, and at 190, I think it's worth it. This one's an interesting one, so you'll have to wait until I do my full video on that. But let's go through the rest of these ships. Those are just my first takes on those. So when we get to those in here, I'll just kind of skip over them because I kind of already covered those three. But yeah, the Arrow. The Arrow is one of the best ships that is under $100 if you are into combat. If you are like, I just want to do some light fighting, or I just want to, or I mean, not light fighting, but I want to do some dog fighting. And I don't want to spend an arm and a leg to do so, but I still want to have a decent chance. The one you get is the Arrow. The Arrow is, I want to say, the fastest under 100 fighter, like that's worth its price, outside of maybe the Avenger. But there's always this thing between the Arrow and the Avenger, because the Avenger Titan is cheaper and gives you a little bit more to do, whereas the Arrow, I think, is a little bit more maneuverable, if I'm not mistaken, but it's a dedicated fighter. So I think you have to really be dedicated to fighting if you're going to get the Arrow over the Avenger. Otherwise, the Avenger Titan is probably going to be the better ship. And then, of course, there's the Gladius, which is $15 more, but I don't know if you're getting $15 more of value by getting the Gladius, but the Gladius is a great ship. So the Gladius is a more all-around fighter, whereas this one is more, I think, based on speed. And one of the things that I think is great about the Arrow is it fits into a lot of other ships. It fits into a lot of places where sometimes only a snub is supposed to fit. Now, it's not quite as good at it as the Razor EX, but because of its kind of smaller frame, it still can fit into a lot of places. So I think the Arrow is a good ship if you have one. I have no notes for you, but I do think you do have to figure out where you want to sit. Do you want a fast and maneuverable fighter? You get the Arrow. You want the more all-around, you get the Gladius. If you want the more utilitarian, I think you're going to want the Avenger Titan or something like that. The Ballista. So I go back and forth on the Ballista. The Ballista is really good at, it's got guns, and it's got missiles, right? And it's surface to air, right? It wants everything. Everything that's trying to get to you is gonna have a hard time, right? If it's coming from the air, and it can, those missiles, they can do some damage. But here's the thing: you have to be able to refill it. So you're gonna need a secondary ship to be near it so that you can refill those massive missiles. And then, of course, the weapon from the ground, you only have so many areas that you can point it at, whereas the Centurion, is going to be much better at attacking things from the ground. But it's 140, and that's my biggest issue with it. It's very expensive for its limited purpose. I suppose you could carry a few people in it, but not very many. And yeah, it doesn't it doesn't do well against something like the Nova tank. The Nova tank has anti-air, and it has anti-armor, and it has anti-air, anti-troop, and anti-armor. So yeah, I think that the Nova tank is the one to buy. It's also $20 cheaper, and again, you could get it for cheaper. It just depends on what you need. If you have if you know you're going to be doing a lot of ground combat, and you know you're going to be doing a lot of defense from the ground, then I could see why you'd put a Ballista in your fleet. But outside of that, it's a little bit too expensive. I'd rather have the tank or the Tonk. My bad. I've been doing Star Citizen content for too long to still be calling it a tank. I don't know what's wrong with me. The C8R. The C8R. So the C8R is I need a Ursa medevac, but I need it to fly. And it's basically, I call them the same thing. They have basically the same capabilities, except this one can fly and the medevac can't. In fact, when the medevac came out, a lot of people were like, I'd rather have a C8R. And I understood that if they needed it to fly, but if they didn't need it to fly, I didn't understand it, because the C8R is obviously, the ability to fly and the ability to jump into quantum is great. At the same time, the C8R can still get shot down out of the sky from anti-air. So you're better off with the medevac if you need to get in without and not worry about anti-air. You're better off with the C8R if you're not worried about anti-air. But one thing I think will happen is I do think ground vehicles will be kind of forced into the game, because I think anti-air is going to be extremely common when it's all said and done. So that's your trade-off. I think the C8R is the best. If it's at least top 3 best ships to put inside of a Carrack, because it gives you that extra medical bed. Now the Carrack does have two medical beds already, but I do think this is still a great ship to put in there, have that extra medical bed, because the amount of crew you have on there, having 3 beds on there, I think would just be cool. Plus it's built to fit inside of a Carrack anyway. Here's looking forward to even more C8 variants, because I do think it is a ship that could use could get a few more variants. I could even see like a small tiny repair ship or something like that. The C8X. Now this is the best fighting C8, but I do think at $45 you could purchase other things, including other snubs that I think would be better, because you can fit more of those snubs into wherever you can fit the C8X. For instance, the Fury. I would rather get 2 Furies and fit those into any place pretty much where a C8X would fit, rather than getting 1 C8X. However, if you really like the snub thing, and you're like really into trying to match your Anvil ship with your Carrack, you want the C8X and the Carrack, I get that. But the thing is, this thing comes with the C8. It just doesn't come with the C8X. So I just don't understand why you would get the C8X. It's just a minor upgrade over the C8. It is better than the regular C8 Pisces, but unless you're upgrading from that, I just don't see a reason. If you got the Carrack Expedition, which comes with the C8X, that's the best way to get the C8X. Otherwise, I don't know why you're not getting the C8R or a different snub. Even the P72, I just think there's better snubs generally, and I think you can fit 2 P72s in the top of the Carrack. Speaking of the Carrack, let's get to it. So the Carrack, to me, is going to be, it says it here, Legendary Pathfinder. I think it's going to be the best pathfinding ship in the entire game. Do I think it'll be the best exploration ship? No. Do I think it'll be the best expedition ship? No. I think the Odyssey will be the best exploration and expedition ship. The Carrack will be the best pathfinder. And I think if you can separate it that way, then you don't have to have the Carrack versus Odyssey argument, and you can just be happy with the Carrack. Now, the Carrack does have a lot of things the Odyssey does not have, so I just want to put that out as soon as we start, because I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of people are extreme super fans of the Carrack, and I understand why. I do think the Carrack is one of the best ships in the game. I just also happen to think the Odyssey is one of them as well. But the Carrack, to me, embodies I want to do a lot of things, and I want a large ship, but I don't know exactly what I want to do, because it is modular. And that's one of the biggest things it has over the Odyssey, but it's also one of the reasons why the Odyssey is the better explorer, because a dedicated ship is always going to be better than the task than a ship that is not dedicated. And the Carrack is not dedicated to exploration. It is a pathfinder with modules. So it is a modular pathfinder. It does have a little garage in it. Well, I wouldn't say garage. It's more of a repair bay. And then it has medical bays inside of it. And of course, it has a hangar. So it really, and one of the coolest things about it, and one of the best value things about it, is that it comes with both a snub ship, the C8, like I was talking about earlier, and it comes with an Ursa. So coming with both of those things, I mean, you could take what, 40 plus the cost of an Ursa, which I think is 50. So you could take 90 off the price, and it's already $510 as far as what you're getting out of the ship. Like if you take that off the value of the ship, it's $510. Now, the Carrack was much cheaper earlier, so if you got a very cheap Carrack, kudos to you, because you are already well into the value of your Carrack. And yeah, I completely understand that. People love the Carrack. I understand why. It's one of the best, one of the most beloved ships in the game. And yeah, if you own one, even at $600, I still think it's worth the price. I do think you should get it for cheaper. You should be able to get this for $400 without even really breaking a sweat in the CCU and upgrade game. And I think it's best that you get it at that price. The Centurion. So this is the one you get. This is the better fighter combat. So if we compare these, the Centurion and the Ballista, now it's $30 cheaper, but the Ballista is obviously going to be better at fighting off the larger ships, you know, the medium and large and above. Medium and large, maybe some subcaps depending on how good your shooting is. The Centurion is for the fighters. It's for the snubs and the light fighters. It might have a chance against some medium heavy fighters getting into the medium sizes, but mostly it's going to be for your fighters, and it'll do a pretty good job at getting those fighters out of the way. They're meant to be paired together, and this is what I would say. So I didn't want to say this earlier until I talked about what the Centurion can do, but I think unless you're buying both, you shouldn't buy either, and that's kind of my rationale on both of these. Unless you have that very specific use case of where you need to get rid of fighters and you already have something that can get rid of the larger ships, I think unless you're buying both, you shouldn't buy either, because at $250 they are expensive, but you can get both of them for about $200 combined if you play the upgrade game. So at that price, I think they're worth it. But again, if you're not buying both, I don't think you should buy either, and that's a pretty good. I think that's a pretty solid thing to go by with it when it comes to the Ballista or the Centurion. But this one doesn't require as much reloading because you could just put all lasers in this thing. So, and at $30 cheaper, if I have to choose between the two, I'm probably going to get the Centurion if it's based on value. But if it's based on utility, I'd probably get the Ballista. So it's kind of, give or take. What do you need it for specifically? But like I said, even when it comes to the Centurion and it comes with the Ballista, I think you should get the Nova Tank. The Nova Tank does enough of what both of these do to justify its price at $120. The Crucible. So this ship is worth much more than $350. I would say this is a $600 ship. If you don't have a CCU to this one, get one. Even if you're not interested in heavy repair, get a CCU to this ship. Even if you're not interested in whatever you think this ship will be able to do, garages, vehicle repair, get a CCU to this. This is going to be one of those, another ship where I'm going to say, when it goes up in price, we're all going to say, hey, we've been telling you for years this ship is going to go up in price. You've seen it with the Polaris. You've seen it with the Pioneer. We're telling you, folks. Even the Sabre got a price increase. Like, come on. But the Crucible and the Endeavor are two of the most undersold, but underpriced. They're two of the most underpriced ships in the entire game. I have no doubts that this ship will end up at least at the $600 price point. So get a CCU, and that's just what I think everybody should do in general if you're willing to, put that money into the game. Outside of that, what can the Crucible do? It is supposed to, as you can see, it has a repair bay where you can fit that's a Mark I F7C, but you're supposed to be able to fit ships inside of it and then have arms that kind of come out and work on those ships that are inside of it. But that's not all. It can do this with vehicles. It can do this with larger ships, because that entire portion that has the enclosed F7C part, so this here, this entire section breaks off, and then you can leave it wherever it is, so you can let people do a bunch of cargo work, or not cargo work, repair work in that. Take the outer portion, this portion here, the kind of scarab looking piece here, and then you can go work on a separate ship. So you can work on 2 ships, one with this part and one with this part. Obviously you need crew to do that, or you could even leave this bay and let the people who bought the ship, maybe they just pay you to use the bay, and then they do all of the repair work themselves, and they pay you for the supplies that they use. There's so many ways to use this, and it is, as far as we know, going to be the capital repair ship that we have in the game. So a lot going for this thing. I think it's going to be one of the coolest ships in the game, and I also think it's not coming for a very long time, so you got plenty of time to get it. However, I don't know when that price increase is going to happen. So like I said, I think it's worth the CCU. The F-7C Hornet Mark II, I think it's a great fighter. I think it's going to be the middle of the road fighter when it's all said and done and everything is balanced. I think if you're looking for a medium fighter, you're saying, I want to be able to shoot at some of the smaller ships and have a chance against some of the light fighters, and then I also want to have a chance at some of the heavy fighters by being able to, dip in and dip out of those ranges. That's what the medium fighter is all about. It's about fighting things at its size, things a little bit smaller, things a little bit bigger. And if you want to do that, I do think this will be kind of the standard bearer for the medium fighter. So if you're looking for kind of an all-around medium fighter, you get the F-7C Hornet Mark II. The Tracker, I already talked about this one. Obviously, this is the one you get if you're trying to, like it says here, it's a scout, it's a tracker, it's a pathfinder. You're going to be able to find things in this, and that's the biggest thing. Are you a bounty hunter? Are you just kind of looking for things, but you want to be able to defend yourself? That's what the Tracker is. The Ghost is, I'm going to sneak up on you, and I'm going to blow the crap out of you, because that's what it's all about. It's a stealth fighter. The ones to compare this to are like the Saber, Firebird, and maybe a smaller one like the Razor EX. And that's what you really have to determine, like, what do you want to do, because this one is the better fighter, I think, out of those 3, whereas the Razor EX is the fastest out of the 3, and the Razor Firebird, I think, is going to be the best as far as surprising your enemy. So just depends on what you do, and obviously the Firebird is more missile oriented. The F-8C, you can't buy it unless you got the event badge, which is, of course, that golden ticket. If you go to my Discord, you should be able to get in contact with at least one person who's willing to give you a golden badge. Otherwise, just look online. A lot of people are willing to give away those golden tickets because most people only wanted to buy one F-8C Lightning, so they found 6 or 7 tickets. So they're more than willing to give it up. I think most of the time you can get one. But the F-8C Lightning, what do I think about it? I think it's going to end up being one of the best heavy fighters in the game. I think it'll be top 3. I don't know if it'll be the best because the F-8A is coming, and that will be better than this one. But we don't know what we're getting with that. And then I think there's the F-8X and the F-7X. I think those are coming too. So we have no idea what's going to really happen with this stuff. So, but I do think this will be at the top tier of heavy fighters when it's all said and done. Right now, it's good, but not. I don't want to say it's not great. It's somewhere between good and great, but it's not. I can't fully give it great. So I do think it's in a decent place, but not in a great place. I do think it's kind of being nerfed right now because they're trying to kind of keep down the hype for it. But I do think when it's all said and balanced, the F-8C Lightning will rise to the top or near the top. The Gladiator. Now, I would have said, if you would have asked me 6 months ago, I would have said the Gladiator was a skip and it needs some love. But now I think it's one of the best 2-person ships that you can purchase. At $165, the price is just worth it. All the guns, I'm not sure if all the guns have been upgunned, but some of the guns have been upgunned. And It's a solid fighter now. Now it does still need some work on its flight profile, but it is a solid ship. For the person who can't decide between a bomber and a fighter, you get the Gladiator. Big missiles, nice guns. It's to fight those. It's kind of like the F7C, except it's got more a more versatile loadout as far as what it can shoot at, right? So this one can very easily target like those medium ships and large ships because of its missile capabilities, but also because of its size guns. It's probably going to do a little bit less. It's going to be a little bit less great at fighting like the light fighters, but it can still do it. It's just not going to be as good as something like the F7C. So I would say get the Gladiator if you know you're going to be fighting slightly larger targets, pushing more into I know I'm really only going to be fighting medium fighters, medium fighters, heavy fighters, and like the medium to large ships. Then I would lean more towards the Gladiator. But if I know there's going to be a few more light fighters in there, then I'm probably going to go with the F7C. The Anvil Hawk. The Anvil Hawk is, I think we were talking about it on my stream the other day. I think it's the Batman ship, right? It's for the person who knows they want to do some dogfighting, but they also are more dedicated to the bounty hunter role. I know I'm going to need to put a person in the back of this thing. I'm going to be capturing some people alive. I think you could put, it says dead or alive, so I'm sure you could put dead bodies in the back of that thing too. So I think that's kind of the focus for the Hawk here. It's also pretty cheap for a fighter, and it's pretty good in a fight too. You're not going to really go against any heavy fighters, or I mean, you might be able to swarm. I mean, you might be able to pull it off, but the Hawk is more so, I'm going to fight some light fighters or some heavy fighters, or light fighters and medium fighters, and it can do it. It can do some decent work against snubs. It's not going to be great against snubs, but if you get your pilot skills right, you can pull it off. But it's really for the person who's like, yeah, I want a fighter, but I also want to be able to take home the occasional bounty. And that's really who it's for. And at $100, yeah, I mean, the price is excellent. And you could still save some money on it with some decent CCUs and stuff. They come around not very often for the Hawk, but you could probably get it for 85 bucks, and at 85 it's a steal. The Hurricane. So for the Hurricane, we are talking one of the best two-person ships in the game. Now, this is the caveat, because the Hurricane's 210, but the Gladiator at 165, you are getting a two-person ship that can do some of what the Hurricane can do. And I would say these two are direct upgrades. So I would say if you have a Gladiator, and you're like, I need to go a little bit bigger, then I'd say get into the Hurricane. But you're going to be a lot more gun focused. But the idea here is, like, when I look at these two ships, now I can kind of see like where they both fit in at. But I will say this, when you are fighting in the Hurricane, it is really, really fun. Like, with two people in a Hurricane, it's one of the most fun experiences that I've had in a two-person ship specifically. Now, the Guardian, I haven't done a lot of two-person combat in, so, but I mean, not the Guardian, I'm sorry, the Gladiator. But I just think this is a really fun ship, and it's not very often that I can just immediately say that a ship is fun, and that's kind of the primary reason to get it. So the Hurricane, there's probably ships that can hit a little harder, where you can probably crew it with two people, and probably ships that are a little cheaper that you can crew it with two people. But the ones that are just above this and just below this, probably not as fun. So that's one of the things that I think the Hurricane really has going for it. If you like the look, if you like Anvil, it's probably going to be better for you anyway. And I think it's solid. If it's balanced correctly, I think at the end of the day, it'll have its kind of own lane in the heavy fighter market. The Legionnaire. It's the only ship that can do boarding. The only one that's dedicated at boarding. So it's an A+. What can you say about the only ship that can do what it can do? So it's kind of hard to be like, I'm not going to like this ship because it doesn't have this or it doesn't have that. If you want to do boarding, this is your only option right now. So I do think at 120 it is correctly priced. It doesn't have a whole lot of amenities on it, but for what it's supposed to do, and at 120, it's kind of hard. Now, the guns on it, I think, could use a little bit of work, but it's not really meant for fighting. I do think they need some other unique thing as far as fighting to really put this thing home. And we're supposed to be getting this soon anyway, so we'll be able to do a full, better look at it when it does come out in the next few months or so. But one thing I will say about the Legionnaire is it really shouldn't be used to fight with. It really should be disable and board. That's what it's for. Try not to use it for anything else. It doesn't have that second, third utility, but at 120, you're not paying for that second, third utility anyway. So that's what I would say. Use it as a disabling ship. The Liberator, it's one of the greater ships in the game. I actually anticipated getting one, and if you paid attention to my last stream, I was going to get one, and then I got something that made me not need one. So I'll talk about that later, but the Liberator is really one of the greatest, I think, one of the great, let me use the right word because I didn't mean to say greatest. What I meant to say was one of the most underrated ships in Star Citizen. The Liberator can carry a ship on the top. It can carry a ship on the front. It can carry two smaller. It can carry a metric ton of ships inside of it if you get small or snub size. It can carry 400 SCU of cargo. It's got decent guns. It's got probably the best range of any ship of its size or smaller. It's an incredible ship. And even though I don't even need one anymore, I still have a CCU to it because that's how awesome this ship is. At 575, it is worth the price. I do think it'll end up at closer to like 625, 650 when it's all said and done, because I do think this ship is going to end up growing a little bit. I do think it'll end up growing. I don't have any, insider information. I just do think this is going to grow just a little bit because it can almost fit some things that I think it will be able to fit when it's all said and done. So we'll see. And also because the Ironclad and Ironclad Assault kind of jumped in there into the mix, I think they're going to have to justify the Liberator just a little bit more because of that price being higher than the Ironclad Assault, because I have an Ironclad Assault right now, and I don't think I would trade that in. If I could only choose between the Liberator and the Assault, the Ironclad Assault, I don't think I would choose the Liberator right now because the Ironclad Assault is just that good to me. So they're going to have to, if the Liberator is going to cost more, they're either going to have to up the price of the Ironclad Assault to make it about the same as the Liberator, or they're going to have to increase the capabilities of the Liberator. So I think it's more likely that they just increase the capabilities of the Liberator or probably do both. Maybe the Ironclad Assault, because the Ironclad is coming next year. I think maybe the Ironclad Assault maybe gets a price bump closer to 575, maybe 565 or something like that, and then the Liberator gets the 585, and 585 to 600, and it'll maybe add the ability to put maybe a bigger ship on the front, or maybe more cargo inside, or maybe a few more amenities inside. And then that'll justify the $25 increase. That's what I think it's going. So you'll see, or we'll see in the next few years. I don't know if the Liberator's coming anytime soon. I didn't see anybody mention that it was in development or anything, but the Ironclad is, and it doesn't look like they're working on Anvil very soon. It looks like it's Misk and Drake. So Anvil is probably 1.5 to 2 years away at the earliest. The Paladin, I talked about this one already. I do think it's trying to fill in the gap of just, you want a fighter, but you don't want all the extra that comes with the Connie because it has all that, it has that gigantic back and the soft points and all this stuff. Maybe but the Andromeda is going to have way more missiles, so you have to contend with that. I do think that the guns on this thing are going to be absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. I do think that the quad size 5 cannon, I guess I just need to see it shoot. I need to see it shoot because I need to know if this thing is gonna be as much of a wrecking ball as I think it is. But I do think it's gonna be like when I try to think of it, right, I'm still gonna do a full review on it. I just think it looks like it's the gunship that people were asking for. Very, very limited amount of crew, not a whole lot else going for it. It's dedicated to the gunship role, and it just got big guns on it. And I think a lot of people are gonna flock to that. I personally wish it was a subcap and it had some more utility to it, but I see why that CIG's doing this, because I think we needed it. I think there were so many people that were trying to make other ships fit into that gunship role, or their gunship that they had just wasn't quite getting it done. And I think this is the one that they needed. Just a gunship, nothing else, but it's doing the gunship thing the right way. The Spartan. So I used to think that this ship was very useless as far as its utility, but it does have the capability of fitting a lot of people inside of it, which ground transport for a lot of people is going to be a thing, especially with this anti-air stuff that we can see right here, right? But then another thing that it has going for it is anti-fighter. So you could have somebody manning this gun, and you can have somebody, as you're rolling through, you can, kind of be, make sure that nobody's rail gun is shooting at you and everything like that. This is specifically for troop transport, but I think what a lot of people should consider is, how are you going to transport a lot of people on ground? Because there's no other vehicle right now that can carry as many people on the ground. So if you know you're gonna need to do that, at $80, it is the cheapest of this Titan platform thing that they have as far as how large it is. You just won't have a lot of ships that can carry it, and that's the biggest downer for it. That's also one of the bigger downers for this Titan platform, which is the Ballista, the Centurion, and the Spartan. They're all kind of similarly sized, and you just can't fit them on a whole lot of ships. That's what your C2, your M2, and your A2, that's what those cargo area bays are for, to fit these things. You're gonna want, your ironclad assault. Those things are gonna be able to carry this. So unless you have a ship to move it, you're probably not gonna want one, but I can see the purpose for it. And at $80, you're not spending too much. I still think it should be about 60 bucks, maybe 65. I can do 65. So if you can get this for 65, I think that's where the sweet spot for it is. The Anvil Terrapin. Now, this would be a ship that I would try to convince you was worth its salt. But I no longer can do that because this ship exists. And I do think this is going to be the better value for your money. However, let's talk about both of them, but we're gonna use this picture because this is the new one. The Terrapin is a scout ship, and it is extremely tough. That's what its purpose is. If you don't need a scout ship, you shouldn't even be looking towards the direction of the Terrapin, because not only is it overpriced for a scout ship, but its utility as a scout ship is kind of in question when you compare it to other things, unless you do need to do extremely long range scouting, or if you need to do extremely dangerous scouting, because it can take a lot of hits, it can take the punishment while it's doing the scouting, and it can go very, very far. Now, if you need those two things, nothing is going to be better than the Terrapin at that price point and at that crew capacity. Now, you can get things that are cheaper. They're not going to go as far. They're not going to be as tough. You can get things that are more expensive. They're going to have a much higher crew count, and they're going to cost much more to operate. Scouting should be cheap. So you're getting cheap scouting in game, but out of game, you're paying big money for the cheap scouting. I do think it will end up being the best scouting ship in the game. Now, I say that again, saying that the price is still very high. I only say that because I think when I think of what I want out of a scout ship, I do want it to be tough so it can actually make it back to give me the information that I do deem as important. And I do want it to be super long range so I don't have to go close to wherever it is and drop it off and then worry about picking it back up and making it back to base. I can send a person from here all the way to the 2 systems away, and they can get there, get the information, and get back. That's what the Terrapin's for if you're looking at utility. Outside of that, it is a well-beloved ship, so a lot of people just bought it because they like the looks of it. I am one of those people. I was going to own a Terrapin anyway, but I did as much research as I could to try to find out what the purpose of the Terrapin really truly is, and that's what I think it is. Now, the Terrapin Medic, it's going to keep that fuel, going to lose that ability to scout and replace that with its medical ability. Now, you can get this for 200 war bond, like I said, or you can get it for 220. I think it's better to get it for 220 and then just CCU down the price. I'm gonna probably end up spending 150 on it, I think, when it's all said and done, maybe a little bit less. I don't have a super big need for it right now, but I do think that CIG kind of missed the mark on this one. I think it should have been 200 for the credit price, and then it should have been 180 or 185 to justify what you were spending on it, because it's just a tier 2 bed. Now, I thought it might have a tier 1 bed to justify the price, and then they could have even sold it for 230. But a tier 1 bed on this, I think, would have sent a message that they kind of really understand the value of what they're selling when it comes to this thing. But at 220, I just don't think it's worth it. At the front, I don't think it's worth it. But if you can CCU to it and upgrade to it, it's a tier 2 bed. And again, you're still getting that toughness. You're still getting that extremely long range. So, and a tier 2 bed, of course, can cure a lot of wounds. We don't even think we have tier 1 injuries. Think that you get tier 1 injuries, you're down in this version of the game. But I think in the future, if you get downed, that would mean you have a tier 1 injury, and then you get back up and you still have that tier 1 injury. You're just mobile and you're able to move around, and then you need even more help to actually be able to fire a gun or something like that. That's just what I think. But yeah, that's the Terrapin and the Terrapin Medic. Get the CCUs either way, whichever one you get, make sure you get a CCU to it. The Terrapin Medic is a ship that a lot of CIG people have been waiting on for a very long time, so people are gonna have it. Just be prepared. People are gonna have it, and you're gonna have a hard time justifying it if you have it. So just be ready. And then last but not least, the Valkyrie. This ship is one of the best dropships in the game, if not the best dropship in the game. Depends on what your dropship purposes are. However, it can fit I don't know if you can fit a Terrapin inside this thing. I don't think you would be able to, but it can fit a Ursa medevac in it, which makes it now have a bed, a medical bed, which is one of the things I think would be missing from something like this, because with a dropship, and it's a little tougher, you know, I do think this is kind of, you can do a hot drop zone in this, and then if people are dying on the battlefield, they'll pop right back up into the ship, respawning into the ship. So this thing could kind of be doing a little bit of Overwatch as you have people on the ground that are doing the big fighting. So I think it's one of the better ships in the game. I won't say best, but I do think it's, let's say top 20 ships in the game out of 240. That's not bad. And I do think that if you have one, you probably are still doing really well as far as like value, because 375, I could see this going up to 425 and still being kind of worth it. Now, what I'll say is right now they have that upgrade offer for it that I talked about earlier, but even still, at 375, this is a very good CCU to get because of its price, where it's at. I wouldn't say very good, but it's a good CCU to get because of where it's at in price. This is often the ship that you need to go from the $300 range to the $400 range when you're doing your CCU chains. So I'll say that. And the Valkyrie, I think, is just a great ship on its own. I still think it needs a few more upgunnings before it'll get to where it's supposed to be. But I think it got a recent upgun, but the next upgun that it gets is going to probably send it over the edge as far as how much it costs. So it'll probably go up in price the next time it gets an upgun. So be prepared for that. But yeah, if you can get this one at 300, I think you got to steal. And that's it for Anvil. A lot of stuff for sale for Anvil. Now, let's look at this Anvil Complete Pack, because I'm going to guess that this is not worth it. The War Bond we can already assume isn't worth it, but let's see if this one can get its price right. All right, so Valkyrie, 2 Terrapins, which probably nobody needs unless you have a very large org. The Paladin, the Liberator. Liberator's worth it in this. Let's see, you get all the Mark IIs. If you got the Mark 1s, that might have maybe made it worth it, but you don't get the Mark 1s. So it's not really a complete pack because you can't get the Mark 1s. Then the Crucible is definitely worth it. The Carrack is definitely worth it. I wish it had the Carrack Expedition available in here, because if it did have that, then I think you might, again, you have this rarity thing that you could put in here. But no, I'm not seeing anything that kind of makes this worth it unless you already have all these ships and you just happen to want them. I don't see anything in here that makes me be like, you should be able to get this, or you should go ahead and get this. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for Anvil Day. A longer video than I anticipated, but Anvil Day is our last day as far as new manufacturers and new ships. A lot of new stuff though coming today. I kind of figured that was going to be the case. I'm glad that they revealed the what is it called? The Paladin. I'm glad they revealed that, because now we don't have to talk about it incessantly and what it's going to be for 3 years. But that's a little weird because they didn't give us the Mirai Guardian, which I think is the Misk Fortune. I think those two. But again, we only know about those because of leaks. So it's not really like we're supposed to know. I mean, the Guardian, we kind of know. The Misfortune, we're really not supposed to even, I mean, as far as we know, we're not supposed to know a whole lot about it. So yeah, I think it's been pretty good. So it's not over yet, folks. It's not over yet. We still have to do the Best in Show tomorrow. I'm guessing there'll be a few more nice CCUs tomorrow, and then the grand finale will probably get our biggest CCUs that we've had. So these are probably going to be your top level CCUs to get the biggest ships, or at least the $750 range. So you'll probably get a $700 to $750 CCU, or 700 or 675, even 675 to 725. The 670, the 625 to 675. Those bigger CCUs, I think you'll either get during Best in Show or during the grand finale. And then it's all said and done. The farewell from IAE is December 5th. I think the show will end somewhere between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. And that will be the last time you'll be able to get anything. So tomorrow, I think December 2nd would be the best day to start trying to finalize some of your fleets. I wouldn't click, go yet until the 4th. The 4th is the day where you have to make all your decisions. But yeah, tomorrow, I'm looking forward to a better, maybe not a better, but a shorter show tomorrow, because all of these have been like an hour long. So that's the thing. It's been a lot of work to put these out. So I hope you've enjoyed them. But let's get Best in Show and that grand finale done. All right, I will see you tomorrow. That's been it for Anvil Day. And thanks for watching. Shout out to the members. Peace.